And good morning to the crew. And I must put on record that my intention was not to speak on this matter, but when gold calls, who am I?
The simple request that everybody has been making is, tell us, did you vote or against?
Well, the simple response to that, as I have indicated in my small write-up on Facebook, is that anybody who doubts my integrity does not deserve me proving it to him or her. Anybody who doubts my integrity does not deserve me proving it to him or her. Then I'm a member of the appointments committee. And when the nominees appeared before the appointments committee, you can go and look at the vetting process and tell me if anybody asked the nominees more embarrassing or uncomfortable questions than I did. Some of the nominees, before they appeared before the vetting committee, considered me a friend. And when we met in the corridors of Parliament, we were nice to each other and friendly with each other. But since after the vetting, some of them don't even want to meet me. They change direction when I'm approaching. But I don't care, because I had to do that civic duty of ensuring that they were properly scrutinized. You remember how Katie Hammond got angry when I raised the issue of the drill ship? And it was captured in our report as one of the reasons why we should reject him, because there is a standing commission of inquiry report that actually, had some ill findings against him. It was captured in the report. So I, through my questioning, had established basis for us, the minority, to reject him, beyond even the basis of a large government size. I had also established a constitutional basis upon which we could reject him. Again, when Stephen Amwa appeared, remember the contract he awarded that he said was, terminated and all of that, and how he got angry that I even raised it. I was doing my civic duty, and like I used to say on radio, Senna, don't do what you not like your neighbors to find out. For me, it is embarrassing enough that adults like us cannot seem to do the right thing without being recorded or recording ourselves. If you have integrity, you have integrity. Integrity is about doing what is right, whether someone is watching you or not. And so my simple response to whether I voted for or I didn't vote for is that anybody who doubts my integrity does not deserve me proving it to him or her.
So we should just trust you.
Sorry?
So we should trust you.
I mean, I can't decide that. I know myself. And I am not one to play to the gallery. In fact, because maybe of my involvement in the media and my involvement in politics, people sometimes mischaracterize me and think that I am one who plays to the gallery. I just do what I think is right. And I don't do it for applause. I don't do it for praise. I just do it because at that time I'm convinced that it is the best thing to do. And I leave the judgment to people. And I don't begrudge people for judging me wrongly, or do I over celebrate people for judging me rightly. I just move.
But what really is the problem here? Because perhaps you voted against them, which you are not ready to divulge. But from what you're saying, you're suggesting that from the very beginning, you have always demonstrated you believe that that should be the position. But what is the challenge here? That in some cases, especially when it comes to the appointment of ministers, for the two occasions that your side has had opportunity, it seems you are unable to vote against anybody. You are unable to achieve that 100% when it comes to a position. What's the challenge?
Sana, that is a very, very beautiful question. But one, unfortunately, many in our party are not willing to confront. And that, for me, is my challenge. What is the problem? It's not about emotion. It's not about threats. It's not about huffing and puffing. It's about identifying what makes it impossible for us to hit our target when we set one, like we have done, especially in relation to the, confirmation or rejection of ministers. That is a conversation the party should be having, beyond the witch hunting and the condemnations and the swearing of whatever deities and the curses. We must have that conversation if we are a progressive people. If we don't have that conversation, we will witch hunt, we may get some of the witches, but we may also crucify innocent people. But the reasons why we fail to meet our targets will remain, and people will continue to exploit those weaknesses. The human being, and you have to understand, by nature, has extreme impulses. That explains why, for example, an African driving on an African street doesn't really see anything wrong with jumping the red light or driving beyond the speed limit. But that same person in a developed country like the Western world, where systems work, will obey every traffic regulations. You know why? It's not because he's all of a sudden, reformed and disciplined. No, it's because he knows that impulse to jump the traffic is still there. That impulse to go beyond the speed limit is still there. But he knows there are checks and balances to ensure that he gets punished if he does that. So he restrains himself. So a conversation that can come as a result of the question you have asked will help us identify the challenges and put in place the checks and balances that will contain the impulses of people when they are tempted to be treacherous. Any other approach will not guarantee us winning next time. So, like I tried to start the conversation in my write-up, I focus on 4 votes that we have done. 5 votes that we have taken since this parliament began. First was the speaker's own. The caucus took a decision, got the party involved. The party supported fully. There was no disagreement from the beginning to the end. Everything went seamlessly. Proper collaboration. Like I said, the party provided the needed support and the needed encouragement and the needed guidance. And the caucus determined the strategies and implemented. And so it was seamless. And we produced a speaker for the first time in our 4th Republic. Fast forward, we had a vote on e-levy. Again, the caucus was united. It was a decision with collaboration from the party, no disagreement at any point in time. And so you will recall that when the NPP attempted to pass the e-levy the first time in December of that year, the speaker's seat was smashed. Some of the majority members sustained injuries because the 136 members on our side stood our ground and said to hell with whatever attempt that they were going to make. That was unity of purpose. And that came as a result of collaboration, effective collaboration without disagreement between the party and the caucus. Then we had the Hawakumsin Kojo Pong Kurma's vote. Then that till today hurts me to the bone.
Ghana's gold.
Because
Radio gold.
at the appointments committee, the disagreements began. While some were of the view that we should include the security ministers, some disagreed. We should include them in our recommendation for rejection to the plenary. Some disagreed. In the end, those who disagreed won over those who wanted the security ministers to be included. Fortunately or unfortunately, when the report of the committee was made public and the security ministers were not part of those recommended for rejection, the party got upset. And I will say, fairly so. They got upset. They expressed their frustration and demanded that the caucus amended their recommendation to include the security ministers. But the caucus leadership thought that was going to be a weakness on their part and an indication of how indecisive they were. And so they pleaded, I was privy to those discussions, they pleaded with the party to accept those that we had recommended so that we could focus as a caucus on those that we had recommended for rejection, to reject those people, and then later come back to the discussion of the security ministers. But the party wouldn't budge. So first disagreement at the committee level, then that disagreement, seeped into the party when the report of the committee finally came out. I recall that the morning we were going to take the vote, Chairman Ampofo, General Secretary Asedu, at the time, came to meet the caucus. And the discussion degenerated between the party leadership and the caucus leadership. So the caucus took a decision to ask them to go to Speaker's office so that the three of them, the party leadership, the caucus leadership, and Speaker Bagwin, could take a decision on whether we should amend to include the security ministers, or we should ignore and focus on those that we have recommended. That meeting in Speaker's office ended inconclusively. And so the leaders came to the chamber and gave no direction to the caucus. And so members were confused, and the extreme impulses that I spoke about earlier took over. And so people misconducted themselves because there was no direction. Again, look at the votes that we took on the VAT.
Radio Gold.
As a caucus, together with the party, we agreed, and there was no disagreement throughout. And so when the day came, 1-3 were there and they stood to be counted. Unfortunately, one was absent due to ill health. And that's how we lost that vote. So, Senna, if you compare the four scenarios I've given so far, you realize that when we lost the e-levy vote, maybe I didn't end that story. I mean, when we resisted it, we eventually lost it when it was called the second time. Why? Because of a technicality.
Radio Gold.
When it was called, remember, before the e-levy was called the second time, you remember, there was a court case regarding the way we resisted the first deputy speaker from voting. And so the court ruled in a certain manner that some of our lawyers thought that we could use to embarrass the bench. And so they suggested that instead of staying to take the vote, we should walk out. It may have come from a good place, a genuine place, a genuine legal, a genuine place of legal opinion, but that was the advice. Some of us resisted it. We thought it was not good. It didn't look good. We should stay and vote and be counted. But they thought that if we went out, we're going to deny the majority the quorum, and they would not be able to pass the vote. But they did. We walked out, and they did. And if you recall, I think we are still in court over that matter. So the four scenarios, you will see that the Howe Kumsin one was lost embarrassingly. The E-Levy one was lost based on technicality, either our miscalculation of the judicial system. The third one, that is the VAT one, was also lost, if you like, on health grounds because one of our members couldn't be present. In fact, two. One couldn't be present on health grounds, the other because of the legal thing against him. So 135 members to be counted. Now to this one, this recent one.
Okay. Again, we as a caucus together with the party, I believe because of some suspicions of each other, never created a platform for us to thoroughly look at the issue, consider the threat, and determine how we will deal with the threat in the course of executing this tax. We did it. And so we knew there were threats, but we simply didn't have structures in place to deal with those threats. And I'm saying that it is okay to witch hunt and to want to find out those who, were treacherous. But it is more important to determine how you can put structures in place so that in future, when such a vote is called, people with the impulse to be treacherous will not have it easy. That is more progressive. That is more progressive.
What was the threat here?
Senna, look, you have to be very honest about some of these things. People have familiar relations. It's a threat. When you ask people with some kind of relationships to go against each other, yes, the national interest is there. Yes, the party interest is there. But you don't know how deep some people's relationships run. Some of us can ignore how deep it is and do the right thing. But we are not all the same, Senna. And that is why you need checks and balances. It's just like the traffic example I gave. Some of us don't even need cameras to drive within the speed limit because we know the threats to our lives and to other road users. So you may not, as a person, need cameras. But we are not all the same. And it's because we are not all the same, that is why some of these checks and balances have to be put in place. So clearly, not everyone can ignore certain relationships when it comes to, such decisions. Not everybody. And you have to recognize that. And once you recognize that, you need to put in place a measure to help such people to overcome that threat.
But how is that possible, considering you're doing a secret vote, that when a person gets into the ballot box, they make a decision, what they do there, you do not know.
That's just one example. That's just one example of the threat I've given you. And I'll answer the question of how you can prevent that. The second example is that the second reason could be that people have needs. People have needs. And you don't know what certain, the lack of certain things in some people's lives can cost them. So don't take it for granted when your opponent begins a one-on-one engagement and begin to identify the needs of your people and begin to tempt them. That is why God himself sent prophets down. Because he knew the devil would always be there to tempt his people. That's a threat you needed to put in place structures to contain. And let's not ignore also the fact that our caucus was just healing from a disagreement. That's another threat you needed to factor into your strategy. How to ensure that little disagreement that the party is coming out of healing from did not impact on this. You just don't assume that things will take care of themselves. And like you said, it's a secret ballot. How do you ensure that? Senna, I'll give you one example without more. I've heard people requesting that members should show evidence of how they voted. The question is, was that part of our strategy? Was that part of our announced containment measures to members? Because that could have been. If we had discussed thoroughly and examined all the threats that I have talked about and came to the conclusion that if we did not put such a measure in place, some people were going to defy, we could have instituted that as part of our strategy. And we would have expected and directed and expected all members to keep evidence of how they vote and to show it. But we didn't. So if you find people with evidence of how they voted, it was based on their own intuition, not because it was part of the strategy discussed and directed. It was part of their own intuition.
And having said that, then let me read to you something. This is Commander of Osuapi. I'm sure you know him. He says, Senna, please ask Suhuyini this. Should the overstated national discourse of the President penchant for flamboyance alone not be a good reason for a no vote, even if the party had suo motu issued a directive? Because the suggestion in this case has been that even if you were listening to your constituents, you would have gotten the indication clearly that this is the way Ghanaians wanted to go. They agreed with the party position. Should not be a motivation enough for all the threats that you have been taking, you have talked about, to be a secondary matter?
Absolutely. But let me address one issue that has been raised in the text. Senna, I have in no way suggested that members may have defied because perhaps the party suo motu issued the directive. I haven't. What I have said is that in the two cases, the Howard Compton case and this one, is that the lines of operation were not clear. The collaboration between the two was not the best. That's what I've said. It is not about who issues the directive. In fact, my information is even that the directive from the party actually was dictated by the leadership of the caucus. But I'm finding that out now. And that is also evidence of the fact that the collaboration and the synergy was not the best as in other cases. So my issue is not that the party gave a directive and the MPs think that they can be controlled by the party. That is not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that every time there is no, a seeming cooperation between the two, we have had embarrassing defeats. We have had embarrassing defeats. So the party can issue the directive, but can still go ahead to ensure that the cooperation and the processes leading up to the execution of the strategy is so seamless that no one will have an opportunity to betray.
Okay.
And as to the overwhelming evidence that is available to any member of parliament, especially judging from sentiments of the constituents we represent, to have voted against these ministers, then again, I come to the individual. And that is why we all have our names. Everyone has his name. That is evidence that we are all not all the same. So, I can, based on the sentiment of my constituents and the general, sentiment around the country, say that to hell with my nephew or my in-law, I will vote in the interest of the Ghanaian people. But somebody will also say, yes, I hear the sentiment, but family first. It's left to individuals. But when you put in place measures to make it difficult for people to act based on their individuality, you get an impressive group results. But when you don't put those in place and you allow people to be influenced by their idiosyncrasy, you only have yourself to blame if their decisions don't fall in line with the group thinking. I am not saying this as justification for the treachery that happened. I'm only raising these issues so that we can wake up and smell the coffee and accept our own responsibility when it comes to leading a diverse group of people and aiming to use that diversity to achieve a common goal. Thank you.
And before I let you go, should I read the beginning of your statement to be a disagreement with the response from the party?
I don't understand.
Because you are talking about, is it huffing and puffing, and I wanted to find it and read it to you, exactly what you said.
Yeah.
How you opened your, it's like you disagree with the responses that are coming in.
No, I don't. In fact, if you even, and that's what people are not paying attention to. If you read, even if you check my Facebook wall, you realize that in the beginning I also huffed and puffed. I also cursed. I did. It's still on my wall. But I said that I have all of a sudden begun to think that all that is needless, even though it is popular. Because then all I need to do is to come out cursing and saying, Antoine, people must swear. And if all those who did it, God should burn them in the deepest part of hell. And no one will suspect me. Though I may be guilty. So because some people are doing that. Some people among us may be guilty, but they have also joined the bandwagon of cursing everybody because they have seen that that's the way people don't suspect you. I'm saying I'm not one given into that populism. It may be the way to, keep the suspicious eyes from you. And what I am doing is risky, I know, because it can be misconstrued to mean that perhaps I'm guilty. I don't care, and I've said it in my write-up, that even if people want, they should all be responsible for the 32 votes Brian got, or the 19 votes Katie Hammond got. Maybe spiritually, I voted multiple times for them. I don't care. They can hold me responsible. But I'm saying that there's a need for us to have that difficult conversation of how next time we can get the desired group goal by collaborating better than we did, especially in the two instances where we have had to, reject minister nominees.
Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you, Shana.